If you have been struggling on a new difficulty, while being unsure where the problem is, this video is for you. It contains efficient tips which I believe will have a real, substantial impact on your performance across all difficulties, from Recruit to Cataclysm. Okay, let's get started by talking about the single most important thing in all of Vermintide. Dodging is by far the most powerful defensive tool in the game. You need to learn how to include it as part of your core gameplay, because no matter the situation you are in, you should be dodging all the time. By actively dodging, you are avoiding hits that are coming your way, even hits that you are not intending to dodge. Plus, unlike when it comes to blocking and pushing, side dodging allows you to stay safe while still dealing damage. Furthermore, the attacks that you perform while dodging will control enemies which are close enough to hit you, which gives you an additional layer of defense. Let's talk a bit about the mechanics behind dodging. Each weapon has two stats, dodge limit and dodge distance. Dodge limit is the number of dodges that you can perform in a row, before dodges start to get shorter. It only takes half of a second of not dodging for you to refresh all of your dodges. Half a second. So this is in complete contrast to stamina, which recovers slowly one by one. That means you can practically spam dodge as long as you pace your dodges just a bit. And that is what you should practice at first, spamming dodge, sideways around enemies. Doing so will build your muscle memory for dodging, and it familiarizes you with the dodge limit of your weapon. After side dodging is ingrained in your brain, you can start practicing a bit more refined dodge dancing, and this is where your weapon's dodge distance helps. Dodge dancing is about controlling enemy movement and your own position in such a way that you will not get cornered or surrounded or overwhelmed. You will accomplish this by simply side dodging around enemies while simultaneously being aware of what is happening around you. This is not easy to get used to, but dodge dancing is the bread and butter of Vermintide. I will quickly demonstrate what this should roughly look like. Here I have somehow gotten myself surrounded, so my first job is to break out. I head towards part where there are fewer enemies and push myself out. After that I start circling around enemies with my dodges while controlling enemies with my sword. In the middle you can see my dodge count. It sometimes goes to negative, but that just means my negative dodges are shorter. The number below that is the dodge reset timer, which is 0.5 seconds starting from the moment a dodge ends. One-handed sword is a good weapon for a situation like this. If I was using some other weapon, I would have to use more stamina for pushing. As you can see, some enemies are trying to surround me, so watch out for those. Here is a brief intermission about being familiar with your weapon. In Vermintide, each strike of a weapon can have its own unique properties. If you are a brand new player, it's enough to know which of your attacks work well against armor. You can quickly test this out in the keep by hitting the armored target dummies. Eventually, you should learn which attack sequences to use in different situations. Royal with Cheese has made an extensive guide covering common attack combos. If you are unsure what combos your weapon has, I highly recommend checking out the guide. Link in the description. If dodging is the most important thing in Vermintide, understanding difficulty spikes is the second most important. As a rule of thumb, dying to attrition is not your biggest concern. Usually it's sudden spikes in difficulty which end runs. Difficulty spikes happen when enemy threats stack and/or players get downed while the team is under pressure. The first line of defense against difficulty spikes is to prevent situations from escalating. So let's go through 4 tips about preventing difficulty spikes. Tip number 1. Stick together.
You think?
Splitting up makes the team more vulnerable for things that can go wrong. It's that simple. Experienced players tend to split up more when they become comfortable with the game, but there is practically no situation where staying closer together is a bad idea. But you probably knew that already. What I would want you to focus on is trying not to get pushed apart from your team in the heat of battle. That's something I have seen newer players fall victim to, and even older players, including myself. Don't let the enemies alone decide how you move. Tip number 2. Aggressively take out specials. Specials are the root cause of most of the wipes. It's dangerous to give them time to become an issue. The vast majority of the time, no matter what is currently going on in front of you, it is less important than taking out a special. Make the space and take the shot, even if it comes at the expense of some of your health. Push, dodge backwards, and fire. After that, find the time to reload your ranged weapon as soon as possible, so that you have it ready when the next special shows up. There is a night and day difference between casually shooting specials when it's convenient and treating specials as the huge threat that they can be. It always should be your first instinct to locate a special when you hear one. If you absolutely can't shoot it yourself, tag it. It's so much easier for someone else to take out a special when they don't have to waste time pinpointing its location. And on that note, tag everything. It's a lot easier to keep track of an elite enemy's movements and attack animation when its outline is highlighted. Spamming tag can also help you locate a special when your view is obstructed by a horde. Tip number 3. Keep track of the horde timer and boss triggers. The previous tip was about managing specials, so let's talk about managing hordes and bosses. Hordes spawn in timed intervals, and these intervals get shorter on higher difficulties. There is some randomness to it, but it's possible to anticipate, roughly, when to expect the next horde. Bosses, on the other hand, have certain locations where they can spawn. At the start of the match, the game picks one or two of these static spawn points, and later, when you reach that part of the map where the spawn point is, a boss spawns. Patrols and bosses are paced out in such a way that you will never encounter two in a row. Very good players know exactly where the boss triggers can be, and they avoid walking into them if a horde is about to spawn. But this is too much to ask from a player who isn't as experienced in the game. So, until you get a better grasp of where the bosses can spawn, my advice would be to simply avoid walking further into the map while a horde fight is still in its early stages, so that you don't accidentally trigger a boss. But the key word here is early stages of a horde. Pacing is something you should keep in mind. Don't rush, but don't waste time either by stopping to engage every single enemy or to check every corner of the map for loot. Tip number 4 is about your build. The easiest way that you can improve your survivability is by tweaking your build. I will focus on two of the most important properties: block cost reduction and stamina recovery. Block cost reduction is incredible. It not only makes your guard harder to break through, it also indirectly makes your existing stamina regen more valuable, because block cost reduction boosts the value of all stamina. In practice, this means that it's easier for you to bounce back if your block does get broken. Thanks to block cost reduction, you will get overwhelmed less often. Pair it with stamina recovery in your trinket for maximum impact. Alright, now that we have established the most crucial ways of preventing difficulty spikes, let's talk about surviving difficulty spikes themselves. And the first step in doing that is rationing your resources. Let's first cover healing items and your health. Players tend to be greedy saving their healing items, because even when they have low green health, they still have an opportunity to build a buffer from temporary health. This is easier to do on higher difficulties because there are more enemies that you can use for sustaining temporary health. Your health itself is a resource that you can utilize on higher difficulties for stuff like hit trading. There is an entire mechanic which makes your ultimate recharge faster when you take damage. However, my advice to you is when you see a difficulty spike coming, or if it's already in process, don't be greedy. If you are close to going down, you should heal up immediately. If necessary, find the space to do so. For example, you can drop from a ledge to get a bit of distance, or you can use your ultimate to create enough space for getting a heal off. It's better to be a bit wasteful with healing items than risk escalating a situation by going down. A situation which already was hard to begin with. When under pressure, reviving someone is not a trivial task. It comes with a cost to the reviver's safety. Block cost reduction helps, but there are plenty of times when you simply cannot afford to attempt reviving. At those times, some ultimates can be used while reviving to ensure a safe rescue. Those same ultimates can also be used while performing other actions like healing. Okay, and then a few words about bombs and potions. Only use them when there is a real risk that the situation will spin out of control. Reserve bombs and potions for difficulty spikes. Here is one example of what you shouldn't do. This is the infamous lift bomb on Hail Scourge.
Black Rats, are you ready for this, Lumberfoots?
Instead of wasting a bomb here, you could take out your ranged weapon and clear most of the storm vermin while the lift is still going down. Just because a bomb looks juicy, it doesn't mean that the situation calls for a bomb. Let's move on. Bosses, also known as monsters, are tough enemies which you will face in every match. Most carriers are slow in killing them, so it's likely that other threats will stack on top of the monster. This can create some of the hardest difficulty spikes, so that's why it's desirable to have a monster killer carrier in the team. But most important of all is to be familiar with monsters and how to handle monster fights. Monsters aggro is based mainly on two things: how much damage you have dealt to the monster and how far away you are from the monster. If you have not dealt any damage to a monster throughout the fight, it will not switch its aggro to you. This can be a useful trick to keep you safe while you focus on clearing other enemies. And in general, you should focus your attention on other enemies first, while leaving the monster for last. It is your duty to ensure that the player who is guiding the monster has as much room to do so as possible, because if they get stuck, they die. But if they do get stuck, knockbacks can be used to force the monster to switch aggro. However, if your teammate is doing fine dancing with the monster, do not disrupt the dance routine with needless knockbacks. And dancing with monsters is what you too should practice. First learn the moveset of each monster, what attacks you can and cannot block. Typically a monster uses a block-breaking attack when you are close to it, similarly to how Stormvermin and Chaos Warriors will show you when you are too close. But you can use this to your advantage when you are fighting monsters. You can bait the monster into doing a block-breaking attack, which you then dodge. By doing this several times in a row, you can keep the monster in place while preventing it from switching aggro. However, two things to keep in mind. Number one, the dodge timing changes a bit depending about the attack and your latency. And number two, even if you execute this well, sometimes the monster switches aggro or does a running attack anyway. Happens often with Chaos spawns, for example. Don't sweat it. But yep, when you have monsters aggro, don't try to damage it unless it's absolutely safe. Your duty is to stay alive and hold the aggro. Remember that monsters aggro is partly based on the distance, so keep the monster away from your mates while they handle everything else. And as always, remember to pay attention to the terrain and enemies around you so that you don't get stuck. If you need to get some distance between you and the monster, for example to revive someone, you have 3 options available to you regardless of your career. The first option is simply bombing the monster. Both types of bombs work, but the firebomb needs to land closer to the monster in order to stagger it. The second option is letting the monster itself knock you back. You can do this by jumping while blocking monsters' running attack. Third option is to take advantage of the terrain. If an enemy has to climb up or down, it wastes its time. This is an effective kiting technique, especially against enemies which are not monsters. You can damage those enemies safely while they are climbing, and furthermore your damage is amplified thanks to the game's stagger bonus damage system, which considers climbing enemies to be in a form of stagger. But beware, when a monster is climbing, it knocks you back if you are too close. And one final tip. Monsters and Chaos Warriors have a sound cue when they switch aggro to you. Here it is. So pay attention to that, especially when you are facing away from the monster. And speaking of your back being turned towards enemies, most smaller enemies have a sound cue when they are about to backstab you. If you learn to react to it quickly, it will save you from some grief. Alright, we made it to the end. Hopefully you found this helpful. I would recommend focusing on the key points. I'll see you in game.